May be seated. Thank you. It's afternoon now, so good afternoon, Pastor Seaman. Good afternoon, church. As Pastor Seaman said, a few months ago, we was in our executive meeting, and she told me that I was going to be preaching soon. And if she was by herself with me, I would have said, questioning her openly, but I kept it to myself. And here I am on sermon number 2. I must say that this one was much harder than the first because the devil was at me for various things. Business, medically, my ulcers came back, so I was frustrated, disappointed, upset. So it interfered with my studies and preparation for this day. But I'm now healed. No more open wounds, no more bandages, no more. So Satan was defeated one more time. I want to talk to you today on a familiar text that we all have read or heard about, and that text is Luke 19, verses 1 to 10, that was read by Director Ryan earlier today. My topic today is little becomes much. I am sure that when you were growing up, you would have heard the saying, bigger or more is better. Smaller or less is not good. I know when I was growing up as a preteen, I lived over. We're near Sister Superintendent Batty's now resides. And I had a good friend of mine in the neighborhood that received a pool table for Christmas. And he was the talk of the neighborhood. And I was a little upset because I didn't have one. But God knew, because my birthday was 2 weeks later. So I asked and pleaded that I get a pool table as well. But I wanted a bigger one and a better one. I got it, of course. As Elder Hayward might say, I'm spoiled from the back in the day. So I got my pool table. So I felt like I was more important than my ex-boy down the road. Also, my cousin, one time he got a push bike with 3 girls. And I said, nah, look, wait a minute. So I wanted a push bike too. And I asked for one with 10 girls. I didn't know how to ride the 10 girls, how to use the 10 girls. But I got it, and it sat in the side of the house more than I rode it. But again, I wanted to believe that I had the better bike of the two. And this is what the non-Christian believes as well. They believe that better is more, bigger is more, better, and less is not as good. They also believe that strength is in numbers, and the few become unimportant. They also say that rich and famous people are more important than us poor and insignificant ones. This is the way that the world and the non-believer think. But as Christians, we all know that this is not always true. As we read in the following scriptures, Matthew 25:23 says, his Lord said unto him, well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of the Lord. Luke 16:10 says, he that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. And he that is unjust in the least is unjust also in much. In Judges, the first 7 verses of Judges chapter 7, when the Midianites were terrorizing the Israelites, God called upon a humbled farmer, Gideon, to lead his army into battle. The text says that the army started out with 32,000 weak men. But upon God's instructions, the final number was 300 strong men. Sometimes there is really weakness in numbers when God is not in it. And in John 16, the first 13 verses, when Jesus was doing one of his teachings, there was multitudes of people that were following him in the desert. One late afternoon, and they became hungry. And this caused a problem. Verse 10 of John 6 says that 5,000 men sat down. But in Matthew 14:21 says that the 5,000 did not include women or children. So if you think about it, the total could have been between 10 to 15,000. And all that Jesus had to feed everyone was 5 loaves of bread. I don't know what a loaf of bread size they have, but this is a loaf of bread that I paid for a loaf of bread. So, and he had 5 of these, and he had 2 little fish. Again, I don't know the size of the fish, but I'm sure it was some of the fish that the little boy caught when he was with Jesus with his teaching. So there were small fish. So some small fish. And I want to thank my youth Sunday school arts and craft team for making me these little fishes. So, Brother Robert, they were in the wahoo that was caught out of the boat when you go fishing. There were probably some snappers or something like that that we caught off the rocks. And when you tried to teach them how to fish one day over the other church, and I didn't know how to do it, so that's why I didn't catch anything. They were like the fish that you would get in a restaurant. You pay $40 for, and you eat by yourself, which I know I could. But all that Jesus had to feed this hungry multitude was 5 loaves of bread and 2 little fish. Notice this back to the deacon board last Sunday, but what would you have thought, those that came to the service last week and the afternoon service, what would you have thought last Sunday during the luncheon if you saw if you saw rice like this, 1 pan of rice, 1 pan of macaroni, salad, coleslaw, and 2 little fish to feed all those that were here? I would have probably have gone down to the marketplace and got something. But, the same famous word that pastor always uses, and I say, but after the crowd had eaten all that they could, the disciples gathered up the fragments that remained, and they collected 12 baskets, which was much more than what they started out with. So let us look at how little becomes much as we look at my 3 points. Point number 1, little in stature. Point number 2, much in stature. And point number 3, much in Jesus. Point number 1, little in stature. Verse 1 of the text says that Jesus was passing through Jericho, which, from my studies, was a major custom site for goods entering Palestine from the east. So it was a rich city. Verse 2 says that there was a man named Suckiest who was a chief tax collector, rich. And because he was rich, he believed that he was better than everybody else. As a chief tax collector, Suckiest would have had tax collectors working under him. He was a little man, and his physique was unimpressive. When we talk about short people and being polite in public, we might say he was vertically challenged. Zacchaeus was a Jew and was hated and could not be trusted, nor respected by the countrymen, and they no longer considered him a Jew. He was viewed as a traitor for a couple of reasons. One, he was known for cheating and ripping off taxpayers for more than what was required. And 2, he was a Jew working for the Roman government. He was working for the other team. Zacchaeus only had a small circle of friends, which included a few Roman officials, those that he employed, and a few people that were drawn to his wealth. Outside of this small circle, he had mostly enemies, was lonely, and lived like an outcast. Can you imagine how that must have felt, living like a lonely person and be called a traitor? Some of you know that my family, the Durrant family, have a long, deep history in cup match and cricket in Somerset. So, Superintendent Battersby, if I went to play cricket for St. George's League or cup match team, I will be called a traitor. My family and friends, some sitting here today, or listening to me, may not speak to me again. And it will probably be in my best interest if I relocated off the rock. Because I don't wear blue and blue together July and August. I must get that in. Verse 3 says that Zacchaeus sought to see Jesus, and as a powerful man, he would have heard about the miracles that Jesus had performed. Matthew, one of Jesus' disciples, had been a tax collector, and Zacchaeus must have known him. and probably wondered why he gave up his powerful position and wealth to follow Jesus. That too sparked his interest. Zacchaeus was trying to see Jesus because he would have heard that Jesus was being friendly to everyone, and he had many friends, even to cheats, liars, and thieves. He was all three of these, I guess. He was trying to find out who Jesus really was because he knew that he was missing something. With all the money and power he had, he still was not totally happy. Zacchaeus believed that he was better than everybody else, but the people thought little of him. And while alone and thinking, he was saying to himself, I'm not worthy at all. I'm not happy, no friends. And he saw himself as being little. Not only in stature, but little compared to what the people had, and he didn't. So he knew he was missing something. Because of his stature, Zacchaeus wasn't able to see over the heads of the crowd. His position as chief tax collector required that people respect his power and comply with his directives. But the people did not respect him. They didn't even like him. So why respect him? On this occasion, the crowd elbowed and pushed him back and did not allow Zacchaeus to get a decent view of Jesus. Zacchaeus was not going to let his small size or the large crowd deter him from seeing Jesus. And in verse 4 says that he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree, for he knew that Jesus would pass that way. In my studies, they said this was not an American or European sycamore tree, but one of the mulberry family. They often were planted close to roadsides and had low, spreading branches and was easy to climb. Zacchaeus needed that because he was so short. This invited ridicule, more ridicule, from the crowd by him climbing the sycamore tree because it called attention to his short stature. Point number 2, much in stature. When Jesus came to the tree where Zacchaeus was sitting, verse 5 says that Jesus looked up and said, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must abide at thy house. In my studies, the Greek word for abide is menu. Menu, and it means to remain, to endure, to tarry, or to dwell. This is what Jesus wants us to do. No matter who you are, he wants us to come and stay with him, to remain with him. In his haste, Zacchaeus came down and received Jesus joyfully. Zacchaeus' joy could have come from Jesus' willingness to dine with him. Back in those days, table fellowship was a sign of certain amount of mutual acceptance. The text does not say how Jesus knew Zacchaeus, supernatural knowledge, or he heard the crowd laughing and mocking him. The must in that verse implies that it was part of God's plan for this meeting to take place. Remember that Zacchaeus was a chief tax collector, wealthy, and nobody liked him. He was despised and only had a few friends. When Jesus looked at Zacchaeus, he was probably smiling because he called out to him, could see through Zacchaeus' heart that he was a good man. Sometimes we look at people and see bad. We should look again. There is good in everyone. In his travels, Jesus would have met enough tax collectors and knew what they were like. He knew that tax collectors had a sickness that only he could cure. Suckiest was surprised and delighted that Jesus wanted to be his friend. As Suckiest was taking Jesus to his home, he would have been proud as a peacock, chest out, that small chest out. Because the people that were despising and belittling him, but Jesus was befriending him. Not surprising, though, the disappointed crowd in verse 7 grumbled. He has gone to be a guest of a man who is a sinner. There were other occasions in the book of Luke that said the word murmuring. Luke 5:30 says, "But their scribes and Pharisees murmured against his disciples, saying, 'Why do ye eat and drink with publicans and sinners?'" And in Luke 15:2 says, "And the Pharisees and scribes murmured, saying, 'This man receiveth sinners and eateth with them.'" Be careful when you grumble when God is at work. I will say it again. Be careful when you grumble when God is at work. These people were grumbling, but they didn't know in the future Zacchaeus was going to be blessing them. During the fellowship at Zacchaeus' home, I am sure that Jesus was telling him about God and the kingdom of heaven and how to inherit eternal life. When was the last time someone came to your house and you were able to talk to them about the kingdom of heaven? When Jesus comes in that door, under that roof, or in this case, under a tree, things will change. Jesus blesses every house, every heart, every little boy and girl, and every father and mother. After hearing all this from Jesus, Zacchaeus admitted that he was a bully and a thief and had done all that he could to get every bit of tax money that he possibly could from the people. When Jesus saves you, he saves your mindset. That is why Zacchaeus changed, because he was really saved. So what he would never have given away before, now he does. When Jesus saves you, comes into your life, your mindset is different. I don't care what you were before, but a change comes into your life. Because Zacchaeus' mindset was changed, he decided to give not 1/10 or 2/10, but half of everything that he had to the people. Verse 8 says that he stood up and said unto the Lord, "Behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor. And if I have taken anything from any man by false accusation, I restore him fourfold." Do you wish that you were around back in those days when you would get 4 times what you lost? I would have. Zacchaeus volunteered to help feed the poor and clothe them, helping with housing, and he was going to tell everybody how he wronged them and asked for their forgiveness, and will pay back 4 times as much as he took. By doing all of this, Suckiest would now have little, less than he had before. Point 3, much in Jesus. As a chief tax collector, Zacchaeus had been an outsider, learner, but Jesus brought him inside. As Jesus said in verses 9 and 10, salvation come to this house, for as much as he also is the son of Abraham. For the Son of Man is come to seek and save that which was lost. Zacchaeus' salvation benefits his whole family. Yes. It also benefits the community, as he gave money to them and restituted those who he had defrauded. The life of the community is transformed by the presence of a tax collector who people can now trust. A person is not saved by good heritage or condemned by a bad one. We dare not judge anyone. Jesus seeks to bring the lost to his kingdom, regardless of their background or previous way of life. Through faith, the lost can be forgiven and made new, like Zacchaeus was. In closing, if you have faith, God can turn anything around. Do you know the song, Ordinary People? Little money becomes much when you place it in the Master's hand. Little joy becomes much when you place it in the Master's hand. Little hope becomes much when you place it in the Master's hand. Little love becomes much when you place it in the Master's hand. Little strength becomes much when you place it in the Master's hand. Little faith becomes much when you trust God.
Thank you, Jesus. Just ordinary people, God uses ordinary people. He uses people just like me and you who are willing to do as He commands. God uses people that will give Him their all. No matter how small their role may seem to you, because little becomes much when you place it in the Master's hand. Just like the little lad who gave Jesus all he had, and the multitudes were fed with the fish and the loaves of bread. What you have may not seem much, but when you yield to the touch of the Master's loving hand, then you understand that your life will never be the same, and that your life will never be the same, that your life will never be the same.
Thank you for that, Sister Julie, director, and the rest of the band. Thank you. So if you have just a little faith, watch as your little becomes much. God can and God will do what no other power can do. Amen.